Was it the voice? Was it the fire burning in me?
Hello friends, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. Today I am sharing my $100 grocery challenge that I have been doing throughout the past week. So I will be going through our groceries, sharing those with you, and then going through each meal so you can prepare it too if you are on a strict budget. I have a quick grocery haul and it is so super tiny, so it's going to go by super quick. The only reason I'm really showing you is because I'm doing a pretty much extreme grocery challenge this week, and I'm wanting to show you all of the exact ingredients that I'm going to be using for each of these meals. I'll explain in a minute why I'm actually doing that. But because of that, it is super, super quick. There is not a ton of ingredients. I kept it very, very simple this week. So it is going to be a very quick grocery haul for you. I'm going to be breaking it down for you and showing you exactly how I'm going to be using every single one of these ingredients, so you can see exactly the ingredients that I bought versus how they're being used. Okay, so these are all the groceries I got, and like I said, I used a $100 budget for these, so very, very cheap budget. However, this is 5 dinners and it can totally be done. So anyway, like I said, I will explain in a minute exactly why I'm doing that this week, but I wanted to go through. I'll put on the video here the meals that I'm planning on making with all of these ingredients. Now, there are some things that you will need, like a pinch of sugar or some salt, some pepper, maybe some garlic powder, little things like that that are basically pantry staples that you should already have on hand. So I did not include those. However, when there are bigger items that maybe you don't always have on hand, like the yeast, I did include that. So we have a new yeast. Like I said, this will be for $100 of a grocery haul. So let's get into it. We'll start over here with some of the cold stuff. I got mozzarella, some cheddar, and I usually either get mild or sharp. It really doesn't matter in my opinion. So I got a big thing of that. Some petite diced tomatoes, some traditional, I actually was looking for marinara, but my store was out of a lot of things, so I got just the traditional one. And this is actually going to be used for the pizza sauce. So if you have pizza sauce, you can swap that out and use that instead. Or if you make your own, that is great. So I didn't have any on hand and I couldn't find what I was looking for, so I just got that for the pizza sauce. We are going to be making our own pizza crust, so I did get flour. They did not, again, have the normal one I buy, so I had to get this one. Some medium-sized tortillas, a can of corn. I got 4 cans of the cream of chicken soup. This I don't think is actually in a recipe. I'd have to double check, but I think this was actually just for some lunches. I got some whole potatoes. You can, of course, just use potatoes, you know, these instead of canned, but, and you can also get them diced. I'm gonna have to dice them because they did not have what I was looking for. I got some beans. I just got 2 different kinds. So this is going in like burritos or a casserole. I haven't exactly determined which one I'm gonna make, and it'll probably be pretty last minute when I do decide. So I just kind of got a variety of beans. We were out of ketchup, so I did get some ketchup. I like having noodles in our egg drop soup. I don't think it's traditional, but it adds something. It kind of fills it up and makes the soup go a little further. So I do add that, and that is what these are for. We got another thing of rice, a couple of onions. We got these bouillon cubes. I got chicken and beef. I also do make my own broth, so I'll have these plus the broth that I end up making. some taco seasoning. You obviously do not have to get this, and I usually don't, but I'm kind of running low on some of like the seasonings and stuff to make taco seasoning. So instead of buying a bunch of seasonings, I just bought this. So if you have the other seasonings, you can use those instead of getting this, but yeah, that's why I did that. I already showed you I got yeast for making the pizza crust. Lettuce, a bag of apples. I got 1 pound of ground beef. We got a 10-pound bag of potatoes. We got some carrots, 1 pound bag of carrots, and then celery. 1 bag of the frozen green beans. This is the kind that my family likes best, so I always get these. An 18-pack of eggs. Now for the meat that we're going to be using, so I got that, the ground beef. I also got hot smoked sausage, some bacon, and then chicken. And just out of curiosity, I am curious, I feel like the chicken prices are going up. They were about this $10 for 3.85 pounds, but when I went to actually get this was the only pack I found that was this cheap. The other ones were between $15 and $17, $18. So that was the first I've seen that in a while. So I was just kind of curious, are chicken prices going up all of a sudden? And I'm just now seeing it because in my stores, they actually are going up. So just out of curiosity, is yours also? But we also did get a pack of water. So we got a pack of 40 bottles of water. But other than that, this is a $100 meal plan for 5 weeknight meals. If you noticed when I posted the meals that I have planned this week, you will have noticed that I actually planned for 6 meals instead of the 5. I was able to squeeze in another meal, so that is what we're going to do. I am starting off with rice and beans casserole. I was unsure at first if I was going to just do burritos or a casserole. I ultimately decided on doing a casserole and then serving it with tortillas that people could just make into burritos if they were wanting. And I did have extra chicken breasts. I believe I had 2 large ones that I cut up, so those were still in the grocery haul. They were just extras. So I diced those up, and I'm going to be using those in this meal. If you do not have the leftover chicken, you obviously do not have to add it, but because I did, I'm going to add it in. And then I'm just seasoning it really well with stuff like garlic and cumin and paprika, salt, pepper. I'm only cooking the chicken partially here, just kind of making sure it's cooked on all sides. And then I'm going to put it into the casserole dish, and it will cook the rest of the way in the oven after we assemble the rest of the casserole. I am a one-pan kind of girl. I like to use as little pots and pans as I possibly can to save with dishes. So I am going to reuse the pan from the chicken and cook the rice in it. I did scrape up any of the giblets or anything that kind of would burn, and I'm just going to stir it around. I feel like that will add some flavor from the seasoning that I put into the chicken, and it's not going to hurt anything. So that is what I'm doing here. And I'm also stirring it around and getting it coated with the little bit of oil that I put in. You don't want very much oil at all. Maybe a teaspoon or a tablespoon might be a little bit too much. But anyway, I like to coat the rice, and I am putting in potatoes that I chopped up. This was just 2 potatoes that I chopped into large chunks. You do not have to do that, but I like adding potatoes every now and then to rice, and you do it before the rice is cooked so they cook together. I'm wanting to beef up this recipe a little bit, so a lot of times I will add in some type of frozen vegetable. I had some frozen peas in the freezer, so that is what I'm adding to that. And I am putting in a little bit of broth that I made and some water and then I'll put in the seasonings before I put the lid on and let it steam. Now, I mentioned in the grocery haul that there was actually a reason why I was doing this $100 challenge this week, and it basically was because I keep seeing all these posts in these mom groups that I'm in where they are struggling with grocery prices and just life in general and looking for budget meals that they can make. A lot of times it's even less than $100 and they have like an entire week before they get paid. And a lot of times looking at those posts and trying to see how that would work in our situation, it just seems really unachievable. We are a family of 6, and a lot of times now we are spending between $250 to $350 a week on groceries. Now, we do have more meals at home compared to like the average family because we do homeschool, and almost every meal that we have is at home. Even my husband brings leftovers or food from home and very, very rarely eats out for lunch or anything like that. So a lot of our meals are at home, and I think that kind of is why we have a larger budget. However, this $100 budget is just specifically for the dinners that I'm making throughout this week. So this $100 budget just for dinners, I feel like makes it a little bit more relatable to the posts that I am seeing in the mom groups. So I figured I would challenge myself this week and see if I can come up with a list of meals that, sure, they are not fancy, there are no frills, but they are still delicious, and they will feed a family of 6 on just $100, and hopefully that will feel like feeding your family on a super tight budget can actually be achievable. I have all the components of this meal now mixed together into this baking dish. I put the rice in here. You did see me add in tomatoes because I feel like with a taco meal, the tomatoes are necessary, but you could leave those out if you're not wanting to. And then I put the chicken and the black beans in. I did wash the black beans and drain them before I mixed them in, but I did not cook them ahead of time. And then I added in some cheese and then mixed it all together, threw it in the oven, and I did cover it. So then the chicken and the rice would cook the rest of the way. And this is how it turned out. I also served warm tortillas alongside this, and mostly everybody did eat these as burritos. We are jumping right into the next recipe for the week, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize ahead of time because I don't know what happened, but footage got lost during this recipe, so you will not actually see how it turned out. You'll just have to trust me on this one. This was the meal that I made in my previous video, if you did see that, and it is super simple and it is very delicious. I found this recipe when I was very sick with COVID and I was not really able to stand very long. I had no energy to cook or clean. I was down for several weeks at a time. So this was I needed a quick recipe to be able to throw in the crock pot for my family because I was just so sick I was unable to actually cook a full meal. So that is where this came from, and we have been making it ever since. That was a couple of years ago. Usually I buy the diced potatoes that are in the can for this meal. My store did not have it though, so I am dicing the potatoes myself. And you can, of course, just use potatoes that you peel and dice. These just always cook a lot faster, so when I'm pressed for time, I will use these, and so that is why I'm doing that. If you do end up peeling and dicing raw potatoes, you'll probably just want to adjust your cook time because it will take a little longer to cook. So just keep that in mind. I am now dicing up a medium-sized onion into kind of medium, smallish pieces. They will cook down, so if you have a child like I do that doesn't necessarily love onions, don't worry. As this cooks, it does cook down and it is not an overwhelming onion flavor. I did buy this hot sausage, and when I've made this previously, it was never that spicy. However, this dish in particular, it actually had a little bit of spice to it. However, you can use whatever kind of sausage you're wanting in this recipe, and you can actually probably use different meats like chicken or whatever you're wanting to do. But I always use the sausage and I kind of mix it up. Sometimes I'll do kielbasa, sometimes I will do this hot sausage. You can also do like a turkey sausage, really however you're wanting to do it. I like to dice it up into coins and then half them, because I have kids and I've just gotten in the habit of always cutting these. My family has one of those traumatic stories where someone choked on a hot dog. So anyway, I always like to chop these up as small as I can and put them in. You just don't want them super, super small. Next, you'll put in 2 cans of cream of chicken, and you, of course, if you want to do like cream of mushroom or anything like that, it is a very versatile meal, so you can mix it up if that's what you're wanting to do. I used about half a can of milk and I mixed it up so it kind of had some of the leftover soup mixed in with it. That is really an approximate amount because the mixture is so thick that's in the crock pot. I like to add a little bit of milk. You can also do some broth. I did end up adding broth as well, just to kind of loosen it up, because as it cooks it gets very thick and it can tend to burn if you don't have enough of the liquid in there. So really you can substitute that for something else if you're not wanting to do milk. This is how it looks in the crock pot, and I am terribly sorry, but that is all you're getting, because I start the crock pot and then my footage. I know that I had footage. I can see it in my head. It looked beautiful, but I don't know where it went. So anyway, that was that. It is a delicious meal. I often like to serve it with like a steamed vegetable, and it is insanely easy to throw together. Now I'm going to be making what we call at my house hamburger soup. Those are all the ingredients that you need to make hamburger soup. This is yet another thing that is very versatile, and I tend to make it when I'm running out of ingredients. That's actually how this recipe came to be, because I was getting to the end of my ingredients and needing to make dinner. So a couple of years ago, I kind of came up with this, and this is actually one of my kids' favorite things. All of my kids love this soup and ask for it even throughout the summer. So I like doing it. It is very cheap, and you can kind of just use whatever vegetables or whatever you have on hand. So that is what I'm doing. I'm taking the scraps of my vegetables, by the way, and putting them in this bowl and keeping them in a freezer bag. So then once I get to a full bag of all these scraps, then I can make a broth out of it. I love doing that, and it is so easy if you do it like that, where you're just kind of accumulating them, and then once you get to a full bag, you just simmer it with water, and it makes a delicious broth. In my large pot, I have a pound of ground beef going, and I'm just going to cook that through, and then while that is cooking, I'm adding in the onions, and I do also start adding in the other vegetables so they can start to cook before I add in all the liquids. As you can see what vegetables I am using, I tend to do large chunks of potatoes, carrots, and celery if I have all that on hand. But because this is so versatile, you can use different things. I have before used frozen vegetables like a mixture. You can use those. You can really be very creative and use whatever you have on hand, and it's nice because it can also be like a seasonal dish too, that you're using your seasonal vegetables from your garden or whatever from. This recipe is really easy to put together. It's just getting all your vegetables chopped and put into the pot is what takes the longest. After that, it simmers. You can have it simmer for hours and enjoy it whenever the vegetables are nice and tender. Now that I have all the vegetables cut and put into the pot and the meat is cooked through, I'm going to add in the seasonings, and I keep it very simple. I add in a small amount of salt because I will use some bouillon cubes, and those add a lot of salt. So just a little bit of salt, garlic, and pepper. You can add, of course, any other seasonings that you're wanting, but I try to keep this pretty simple. I am using a beef bouillon cube. I usually will use some type of broth that I have on hand. Vegetable broth tastes amazing in this, but just for the purposes of the grocery challenge this week, I decided to kind of keep things simple and do a lot more of the bouillon cubes. So I am using a beef bouillon cube, and then with the liquid, you can kind of do it however you're wanting. So if you're wanting more liquid like we usually do, I usually do about 5-6 cups of water or broth. If you're not wanting it as soupy, you can obviously add less. Here's how the soup turned out. I usually will serve it with some homemade bread and some jam. This is one of my kids' favorite soups. They're constantly asking for it, and I love how simple it is, but still very, very cheap. For our next meal, we're going to be making some bacon pizzas. I actually included this one as the extra meal. This is the 6th one because I was making it and I'm like, you know what? This is such an easy one. This is so cheap. And I feel like a lot of people don't really realize how cheap homemade pizzas can be. And they can be so delicious and so much fun. So I was actually making these pizzas for lunch one day, and I made them small so everybody could kind of, well, I thought everybody would want to just make their own, which kind of makes it fun. A lot of times little kids love to make their own pizzas. However, everybody was busy doing school, so I went ahead and I just made everybody's, and they all wanted it the same anyway, so it ended up working out. But I will post down below in the description box the recipe for this pizza dough. Super simple. You do not need a ton of ingredients, and really it just takes the longest to have it rise the one time. Other than that, it is a breeze to put together, and like I said, very cheap. I got all the ingredients for the dough put together, and now I'm going to cover it with a warm towel and let it rise until it's about double in size. So now that it has rose, I am going to cut it up into little small pieces of crust. Now, if you're not wanting to have mini pizzas like we're doing, you can do this. I find that it works best with like at least 2 pizzas. Unless you're wanting it super thin, then you can actually stretch it even more than that. But the crust does rise quite a bit, so I would not recommend doing just one of these pizzas unless it is like literally giant. Anyway, I formed them all into balls, and then I'm pressing them down and getting them into mini pizzas, and then I'm going to put them in the oven at 425 to kind of pre-bake a little bit before I put on the sauce and the toppings. You can also make these into what we always called pizza puffs. And now that I'm saying this, I'm wondering if that's even a thing. In Chicago, they have something called a pizza puff. Let me know down below if that's something you even know exists, or if that's just like a Chicago thing. I have no idea, but because I have not seen them down here at all since we've moved. But I do sometimes make this dough into pizza puffs where it's kind of like a Hot Pocket kind of. And I do that for like the kids for lunch. They absolutely love that too, but it's a little bit more labor intensive than just making these little mini pizzas. Anyway, so I am just doing the mini pizzas. They have already pre-baked, and I'm putting the toppings on. I'm keeping it very simple because I do have a budget in mind while I'm making all this. So I go pretty heavily with the sauce because I feel like I don't want it to be too dry, if you're curious why I added so much sauce. And then I did use the spaghetti sauce because I feel like it just is the same as pizza sauce. However, I usually will try to do like a marinara. I just could not find that this week at the store. I topped it with two different cheeses. We do cheddar and mozzarella, and then I topped it with a bunch of bacon that I had already pre-cooked and chopped up. And then I'm going to throw them in, and that is it. If you're needing to save more money on this recipe, you could of course leave the bacon off. If you have a bunch of vegetables that you want to use up in your fridge, you could always put those on. I love how easy and versatile these are. And like I said, if you get the kids involved and they're making their own pizzas, it is that much more fun.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side.
Here's how the pizzas turned out. Usually whenever I make pizzas, I do serve them with a really large salad, but because that is not always in the budget for everyone, I did not add that this week.
I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste.
This next recipe is so easy and quick that it's almost comical. Like, I'm laughing at how quick and simple it is. This is something that I have always referred to as chicken and gravy, and this is the most dump and goest recipe, I think, of all the dump and go recipes. I divided out the chicken breasts from the grocery haul, so I put in 3 chicken breasts into the crock pot. Now I'm topping it with 2 cans of cream of chicken. I'm going to add in about half a cup to a cup of chicken broth that I already have prepared, and then just a sprinkle of parsley over top before I cook it on low for 6 hours or on high for 4. I usually will serve this chicken and gravy over mashed potatoes, and then I'll steam some kind of vegetable. It is also really good over noodles or rice if you want to use those instead. This recipe always reminds me of a recipe from my childhood, and I am curious if anyone else has heard of it. So my brother always used to get something called a sandy mash at like diners or restaurants that we would go to, and it was one of his favorite things. And I don't know exactly if it was like chicken each time or what, but basically it would be a piece of white bread on the bottom, like on a plate, and then you would put a spoonful of mashed potatoes on top of the bread, and then you would have like some kind of gravy, and I want to say it was either chicken or maybe turkey slices on top of that, and it was called a sandy mash, and he would always eat that. And I don't know, this recipe I feel like reminds me of that. And sometimes when I am feeling nostalgic, I will actually make this meal like that. But anyway, I was just curious if anybody else has heard or had anything like that. The chicken is now done in the crock pot, so I took it out because I felt like it was easier to shred on a cutting board, and now I'm putting it back in, stirring it up, and it is ready to serve. Now I did make some mashed potatoes ahead of time, and I'm going to serve this over the mashed potatoes. I added another sprinkle of parsley over top, and here is how it turned out. This is a delicious meal. It is so simple. It takes nothing to throw together, and it is also super cheap.
Crowded places, feel it sinking in. Lonely faces.
This next recipe we call egg drop soup at my house, and I know that it can vary a little bit based on other recipes of egg drop soup, but this is kind of something I've seen a couple different recipes and just mashed them together, which worked out well for my family. I like making this a lot of times for lunch because all my kids enjoy it and it really stretches. To make this, you're going to start off by putting the rest of the chicken breasts into a large pot. There was about 3 chicken breasts left, so that is what I did. And then I believe it was about 6 cups of water. You basically just want enough water to cover the tops of the chicken breasts. And then you're going to cook it low and slow for a while. You want the chicken breast to shred apart, but also you're wanting to create a chicken broth. I did put in a chicken bouillon cube. You do not have to do that if you're wanting to make your own broth, either do like a chicken or a bone or a vegetable broth. Really, it's completely up to you. And I kind of will switch it up every now and then as well. But like I said, I bought the chicken bouillon to kind of make the broths and stuff this week, so that's what I'm doing. So now the chicken is done. It has been cooking for a little bit and it's done and shreddable. I'm going to take it out and shred it, and I'm going to bring the broth up to a boil. I mentioned in my grocery haul that usually noodles are not in egg drop soup. However, I kind of like to beef it up a little bit. So that is why I'm adding it. If you're not wanting that, obviously you could leave it out. Just to each their own, do whatever works for you and your family. Once the noodles are almost done cooking, I then will crack some eggs. And again, if you have a lot of broth, you can do more eggs. I'm doing 3, but these are duck eggs, so they're a little larger than chicken eggs. I'm going to scramble them up and then add them to the boiling broth. I'll also scramble them in the broth as well, just to make sure that they are evenly being distributed and cooking through. Once the eggs are cooked through and the noodles are nice and tender, then I will go in and add back in the chicken that I already shredded. I also forgot to mention that when you saw me adding in the water after it had already cooked, sometimes when you cook it for a long time and it cooks down, to make it more soupier, you can add in either more broth or water. So that is why you saw me do that. I just forgot to mention it while I was doing it. After you add back in the chicken and give it a good stir, it is done and already ready to serve. I like to serve it with a sprinkle of green onions over top, but that is optional. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope that if you are someone that is needing a cheaper budget and trying to figure out what you're going to do for groceries, I hope that you found some inspiration in today's video and know that it is definitely possible. But I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
You should know that